Welcome back to Horrors Worldwide. Today I'm going to explain an American psychological horror film called The Silence of the Lambs, released in 1991. Spoilers ahead! Watch out and stay safe. An FBI Academy student, Clarice Starling, is pulled from her training at the training facility at Quantico, Virginia, by Jack Crawford, who is the head of FBI's Behavioral Science Unit. He greets Clarice and reminds her of their first meeting. Then he tasks her with presenting a VICAP questionnaire to the notorious Dr. Hannibal Lecter, who is a brilliant forensic psychiatrist and incarcerated cannibalistic serial killer. Jack also warns Clarice not to give him any personal information about her to avoid Hannibal getting in her head. After learning the assignment relates to the pursuit of a serial killer nicknamed Buffalo Bill, Clarice travels to Baltimore State Hospital for the criminally insane to meet Hannibal. When she reaches the hospital, Dr. Frederick Chilton takes Starling to see Hannibal. Frederick goes through the extreme security measures they use when handling Hannibal, describing that he once brutally attacked and ate a nurse's tongue at the hospital when security was more relaxed. While unnerved by the disturbed inmates, especially Multiple Miggs, who hisses obscenities at her, Dr. Hannibal is quite the opposite. He stands in the middle of his cell, which has a bulletproof wall instead of bars, and greets her politely. Clarice introduces herself. She and Hannibal have a brief conversation about Buffalo Bill. At Hannibal's request, Clarice reveals that Buffalo Bill has killed and skinned at least 5 women, and received his nickname from a tasteless joke made by Kansas City Homicide. Although initially pleasant and courteous, Hannibal is unimpressed with a VICAP questionnaire, grows impatient with Clarice's attempts at dissecting him, and viciously rebuffs her. He gives her an accurate, yet unflattering cold reading based on her appearance and demeanor. Shocked, Clarice responds that Hannibal should look at himself with that kind of accuracy, and taunts him that maybe he's too afraid to. Hannibal dismisses her, giving her a gruesome description of how a census taker tried to test him, and that he ate the man's liver with fava beans and a nice Chianti. To unnerve Clarice, he makes a bizarre slurping sound. As Clarice departs, Hannibal's neighbor Miggs flings fresh semen into her face. Enraging Hannibal calls Clarice back and offers information containing details about a former patient, Miss Hester Moffat. Later that night, Hannibal kills Miggs by persuading him to swallow his tongue. The name Hester Moffat is actually an anagram that leads to a rent-a-storage lot, where Clarice discovers a severed head in a jar of formaldehyde. Clarice returns to Hannibal. Hannibal identifies the head as Benjamin Raspel, a former patient of his. Hannibal insists he did not kill Benjamin, merely stored the head in the garage. Benjamin was Hannibal's patient, being unsuccessfully treated for manic depression. From the women's clothing found in the garage and Hannibal's remark about a killer's previous efforts, Clarice believes that Buffalo Bill killed Benjamin and that Hannibal knows his identity. Hannibal offers a psychological profile of the killer in exchange for better facilities, where he has an open window so he can view trees and is far away from Chilton. Miles away, Buffalo Bill abducts Catherine Martin, the daughter of United States Senator Ruth Martin. Buffalo abducts her by pretending to be injured, asking her to help him lift a sofa into his van, then beats her with his arm cast. He then imprisons Catherine in a well at his home. Clarice is pulled from Quantico and accompanies Jack to West Virginia, where the body of Buffalo's recently discovered victim resides, and where Clarice helps perform the autopsy and extracts the chrysalis of a death's head hawk moth from the victim's throat. They later find the same type of moth in Benjamin's throat, confirming him a victim of Buffalo Bill. At Quantico, as news of Catherine Martin's abduction sweeps the country, Jack authorizes Clarice to offer Hannibal Lecter a fake deal, promising a prison transfer if he provides information that helps profile Buffalo Bill and rescue Catherine Martin. Seemingly unimpressed with the deal, Hannibal instead begins a game of quid pro quo with Clarice, offering comprehensive clues and insights about Buffalo Bill in exchange for events from Clarice's traumatic childhood. Ignoring Jack's warning, Clarice reveals that at the age of 10, her father was murdered by 2 armed robbers and went to move on to a ranch with relatives. Hannibal explains that Buffalo Bill is under the delusion of being a transsexual and has been turned down by all 3 major sex reassignment clinics. Dr. Frederick tapes all the conversations between Hannibal and Clarice, but they are unaware of that. Later on, Hannibal is restrained in his cell and Frederick mocks him to Barney's fury. He smugly says that Clarice's deal was a sham, but offers to transfer Hannibal in exchange for a deal of his own making. Hannibal agrees but wants a deal of his own. Hannibal reveals that Buffalo Bill's name is Lewis, but will tell the rest to Senator Martin in Tennessee. Hannibal notices that Frederick has left his golden ballpoint pen in his cell. Hannibal is flown to Tennessee under the highest security possible. After being taken off the plane, Frederick introduces Senator Martin to Hannibal. He describes Buffalo Bill, saying that his real name is Louis Friend. He was introduced to Hannibal by Benjamin and found out that Louis was killing people back then and skinning them. Hannibal then causes extreme offense to Senator Martin by taunting her about Catherine. Senator Martin furiously demands Hannibal to be taken back to Baltimore. Clarice passes the tight security and meets Hannibal in his special cell in a local Tennessee courthouse and returns his old sketches as a peace offering. He taunts her for wasting time with a fake deal. Clarice retorts back about Louis Friend, deducing that it is an anagram for iron sulfide, otherwise known as fool's gold. Hannibal demands more of her stories, as per their deal. Clarice tells him a memory of her childhood about a lamb slaughterhouse and how that led her to the orphanage. Hannibal emotionally thanks her for sharing the memory, leaving her with her case file before she is escorted out of the building by security guards. Later that night, Dr. Hannibal escapes from his cell using an improvised handcuff key made from Frederick's pen and brutally attacks his guards, Pembry and Boyle. Hannibal picks up Pembry's pocket knife and walks out. Several hours later, shots are heard in the building, prompting the local police to storm the floor. The scene is one of carnage, discovering Pembry barely alive, his face mutilated, and Boyle disemboweled and strung up on the walls of the cage. Paramedics transport Pembry in an ambulance and speed off while a SWAT team searches the building for Hannibal. On one floor, they see the elevator shaft doors open. The officers find Hannibal with a gun by his side and copious blood pouring from his head, seemingly having committed suicide. One guard shoots him in the leg as a warning. At the same time, the ambulance guards discover blood dripping from the elevator ceiling. As they surround the area and release the door, they find it is not Hannibal. Meanwhile, as a paramedic is giving information about Pembry to the hospital, Pembry sits up and removes his face, revealing himself to be Hannibal. After being notified of Hannibal's escape and that he killed the paramedics and notorious, Clarice pores over her case file, analyzing Clarice's annotations before realizing that the first victim, Frederica Bemel, knew Buffalo in real life before he killed her. Clarice travels to Frederica's hometown and discovers that Frederica was a tailor and has dresses with templates identical to the patches of skin removed from Buffalo Bill's victims. Realizing that Buffalo Bill is a tailor fashioning a woman's suit of real skin, and that his real name is James Gum, she telephones Jack, who is already on the way to make an arrest, having cross-referenced Hannibal's notes with John Hopkins Hospital and finding a man named James Gum. Jack instructs Clarice to continue interviewing Frederica's friends while he leads a SWAT team to James Gum's business address in Calumet City, Illinois. At James' house, Catherine lures James' beloved dog into the well. When James finds that Catherine is holding his dog hostage, he becomes enraged and devastated and threatens to kill her. Clarice's interviews lead to the house of Jack Gordon. After the pleasant talk, Clarice soon realizes that Jack is actually James after seeing a moth fly past, and draws her weapon just as James disappears into his basement. Clarice pursues him, discovering a screaming Catherine in the dry well just before the lights in the basement go out, leaving her in complete darkness. James stalks Clarice in the dark with night vision goggles and prepares to shoot her. When Clarice hears the machinations of his revolver, she swivels around and shoots James. Days later at the FBI Academy graduation party, Clarice receives a phone call from Dr. Hannibal, now in the Bahamas. As Hannibal assures Clarice he has no plans to pursue her, he excuses himself from the phone call, remarking that he's having an old friend for dinner, before hanging up and following Frederick through the streets of the village.